He's just getting ready to start.
Yep.
Wondered where everybody went. I thought I was the only one here for a while.
They're both working. Wow. Well, I always seem to have trouble with the technology until 9:30 when somebody makes it work.
Wonder who that is. You
I
think?
don't know. The internet gods.
There's only one God, and they are not it.
No, but they're the internet gods with little g. Internet gods with a little g.
Or goblins, as the case may be.
Goblins, not
Okay, well, we'll
goblins.
get started, and I'm going to give my standard reminder that if things drop out, they both seem to be working, Ustream and YouTube. And so if they drop out, then just keep track about what time it is, and I'll post the videos later, and you can tune in and finish watching. So good morning. Here we are live at the Holbrook. There's a picture of us, in fact. Hey, John, come on in. Okay. See, there's a big picture of us. All right. Whoa, John's taking pictures. Hot diggity.
John's taking pictures.
See, I can switch back and forth. This is real high tech here.
Nice.
Okay, so here we are at the Holbrook Live, and we're going to continue on in the God is Love Fellowship, which meets here, and we've been meeting about 2.5 years, and all we do is try to encourage each other. It's a real simple concept. We leave what's going on with you and God between you and God. If at some point somebody wants to share with somebody, or that's fine. That can come up. It doesn't mean we aren't available to each other, but we don't go around trying to bust our way into other people's lives. God's taught me to trust people alone with Him, like He knows how to how to relate to them, how to communicate with them, how to encourage them, and we just kind of come alongside and be the hands and feet and arms and legs and try to help each other a little bit. So that's what we do. So let's see. I got a couple of things. Here's a picture of the website again, and let's see. I have and that's the resource page, and I've got some books and different things you can look at.
That looks good.
None of these books are inspired, except the New Testament here, that at least Christians claim to be God-breathed or inspired or special writings of some sort. The rest of them are just written by man only, and they all have errors and problems with them, especially mine right here. Take them with great care, but I try to be as biblical as I can. I try to use a lot of the New Testament writings, go through them and take a look at them, and try to keep my opinion at a minimum and the writings at a maximum. So you can take a look at those and see if they're of any help to you. And then a variety of different books over here, quite a variety of different things you can take a look at. And then there's a few things along the top here about the GILF and how it's not a church and it is actually technically a business with no ecclesiastical authority. That means
we don't get to wear funny hats?
That means I won't do any church
We could.
discipline.
We could.
I won't exercise any church discipline because it's beyond my pay grade.
Free will.
And not that might not be appropriate someplace else. And then there's a little thing with Snoopy here on what you can expect to hear from me as I present things. It's not you got to believe this or anything like that. It's just to give you a heads up. This is what you can expect. And there's a picture of me on the Thai beach in Thailand, and it's just a little bio, just kind of my background, which is a little crazy. And if you really want a surprise, you can read that, and it ends up looking at a roulette wheel. So I'll let you take a take a look at that. Then there's a couple of books here I really that I was able. They're older books, and I was able to get them and put them on here. Part of a thing on What is Faith by Karl Barth, and then there's a thing on What Ultimate Justice Is by George MacDonald. He was a mentor of C.S. Lewis and of Mr. Who did Lord of the Rings? Tolkien also liked George MacDonald. George MacDonald wrote probably 100 novels. He was quite a writer. But he also had some sermons and theological things. But this thing on justice, this chapter that I took, was really encouraging to me, that ultimate justice is making things ultimately right. It's not the mistaken view of justice that somehow ultimate justice is eternally punishing people with relentlessly without ever quitting. That obviously doesn't end up with things ultimately right. So that was very helpful to me. Then there's this one on the goodness of God. These are a little hard to read because they're older. This one's by Stephen Charnock, who wrote a big volume on the attributes of God, and it's really good. I read that years ago, and I think it planted a lot of seeds in my thinking. He's got some good stuff in there. So anyway, that's that. Let's go on to, we're looking at this Acts of the Apostles account by Dr. Luke. And we've had some interesting things. I'm telling you, the plot thickens here. If you remember last week, Paul was giving them the story about you had this deal where the conspiracy against Paul, right? Wasn't that last week? I read ahead and I read behind. I got to remember.
They were almost rioting.
Rioting, and isn't this the one where his nephew? Am I ahead?
He started to speak their language.
Oh yeah. Thank you. He was speaking. They listened to him, and he
listened to him.
Oh, you know what? I might be a week ahead here. I'm getting into what we're going to talk about. So they wanted to tear him apart. They wanted to kill him. This is what ultimate religious zeal does with any religion. When what's at the basis of religious fanaticism is, I believe this and I believe it so much, you got to believe it, and if you don't, I want you dead. I mean, that's Taliban, that's ISIS, can be any religious zeal that's taken to that extreme, instead of being kind and loving and gracious and leave those kinds of judgments up to God. If God wants somebody dead for believing the wrong thing, then that's up to him, but it's not up to us. Unless he tells you to go kill somebody. But boy, you better make sure you're right. Because there are people in prison that they think God told them to go kill somebody, and it's not a good defense. It doesn't usually work in a court of law. So you better make sure you're right if you do something crazy like that. So let's see. So we're moving on to this next. As I said last week when we left, I said, well, it's going to get. It doesn't quit there. This is the plan to kill Paul. So the next morning, a group of Jews got together and bound themselves with an oath to not eat or drink till they killed Paul. Okay, here we go. Religious zeal. And why would they do that? Well, you get hunger pains, you get thirsty, and so you make this vow, and it drives you to accomplish this thing. You can't even hardly sleep or anything. You really put yourself under the sentence of death, really, by starving yourself if you're going to keep your vow that this guy's going to die. So there were more than 40 of them in the conspiracy. And this is in Jerusalem here. This is the center. This is the Mecca of the Jewish leadership. And they went to the leading high priests and elders and told them, we have bound ourselves with an oath to eat nothing until we have killed Paul. So you and the high council should ask the commander to bring Paul back to the council again. Pretend. Hey guys, pretend that you want to examine his case more fully. Then we will kill him on the way. Okay? Conspiracy. They got a plan here to kill
Boy,
Paul.
These are real godly fellas, aren't they?
Because don't forget, he's hanging out at the police station, the fortress. They took him up the stairs, and the Roman commander was protecting him from the crowds. Well, to kill him, they got to get him out. So he said, hey, you call for him to be examined again, and on the way, we'll ambush him and we'll kill Paul. We'll be done with this, and then we can eat and drink. But Paul's nephew his sister's son, heard of their plan and went to the fortress and told Paul. He just happened to be there listening, playing marbles or whatever he was doing, and they probably, hey kid, get out of the way here. We've got important business. So this kid, who happens to be Paul's nephew and happens to be in that location, overhears this. And so Paul called, you heard of the plans, went to Paul, and Paul called for one of the Roman officers and said, take this young man to the commander. He has something important to tell him. Notice he didn't tell this guy what it was. He just said, go take this kid to the commander and let him talk, because he didn't want this getting out. See, you want to be, when you do things, you want to be shrewd in how you do things. You don't want to go blabbing everything to everybody. Jesus didn't, and if you're smart, you don't. You want to be harmless as a dove, but shrewd as a serpent in your dealings in life. So you don't go blab everything to everybody. He didn't want that getting out. Take this young man to the commander. He has something important to tell him. So the officer did, explaining, Paul, the prisoner, called me over and asked me to bring this young man to you because he has something to tell you. The commander took his hand, the hand of the kid, I assume, and led him aside and asked, what is it that you want to tell me? In other words, privately, keeping this under wrap here. What is it you want to tell me? Paul's nephew told him, some Jews are going to ask you to bring Paul before the high council tomorrow, pretending they want to get some information. But don't do it. There are more than 40 men hiding along the way, ready to ambush him. They have vowed not to eat or drink anything until they have killed him. They are ready now, just waiting for your consent. Don't let anyone know you told me this, the commander warned the young man. So, Paul is sent to Caesarea. So then this commander calls two of his officers and ordered, get 200 soldiers ready. We're going to overkill this protection here. And leave for Caesarea at 9 o'clock tonight. Oh, he's going to take them, he's going to do something tonight. Also take 200 spearmen and 70 mounted troops. Provide horses for Paul to ride. What do you think's going on there? Why would he provide horses?
Wait a minute.
Keep him up off the ground where they can't so easily get a hold of him.
Well, I wonder if
He can race
in order
away.
for him to get there quickly, you take a fresh horse with you that's not carrying you. I don't know. I'm just guessing. I probably should look into that. I thought that was interesting. Provide horses for Paul to ride and get him safely to Governor Felix. Then he wrote this letter to the governor. Okay, this letter is going to go with him to this Governor Felix in
They really got ramped
Caesarea.
up. They ramped up pretty hard.
Yep.
Yeah.
From Claudius Lysias to His Excellency Governor Felix, greetings. This man was seized by some Jews, and they were about to kill him when I arrived with the troops. You remember that from last week. When I learned that he was a Roman citizen, remember that? They were about to beat him and lash him, and he says, hey, I'm a Roman citizen. Do you really want to do that? And it struck fear into them. I removed him to safety. Then I took him to their high council to try to learn the basis of the accusations against him. I soon discovered the charge was something regarding their religious law. Certainly nothing worthy of imprisonment or death. No, it's religious zeal again. He wasn't causing, anything against Caesar. He wasn't stealing anything. He wasn't killing anybody. But when I was informed of a plot to kill him, I immediately sent him on to you. I have told his accusers to bring their charges before you, Felix. So that night, as ordered, the soldiers took Paul as far as Antipatris. They returned to the fortress the next morning while the mounted troops took him on to Caesarea. So here you have, they're down in Jerusalem, and they go north up to Antipatris, and there that was probably, maybe he was worried about that being the more difficult journey from there. That night, maybe they spent the night, I don't know. But from there, they went on up to Caesarea with the mounted troops. Remember, another 200 guys. So this commander wanted to make sure that Paul got safely to Felix, because he didn't want to have to be responsible for a Roman citizen being wrongly killed by these religious zealots. Okay, that's kind of, and this is the map of Israel. Here's the Dead Sea, and here's the Sea of Galilee. Here's Nazareth, where Jesus was born. Here's the, by the way, just the modern things. Here's the West Bank over here. It's the West Bank of the Jordan River. That's always in the news. There's Jericho, where the walls came down, it's still there. Bethlehem, where Jesus was born. Here's the Gaza Strip right along here. Okay, so that's kind of the little bit of Holy Land going on there, or Israel.
You know, what's interesting is that this is like the equivalent of, you've got 40 ISIS guys on foot with swords, and you send Paul in tanks and Humvees, you know.
Yeah. Yep.
Hey, Farley.
Go ahead and move that.
The
Hey, welcome.
massive,
Yeah,
the massive
draw.
size of the force
Yeah.
that they sent protecting him.
That's
is,
right.
Is impressive.
I think this guy, the commander, did not want this on his
Don't want a
responsibility.
Roman
He didn't want to blow it.
on his watch.
On his watch. He wanted to get Paul to Felix, and then he can deal with it, and then he can go not worry about it. Because you know how they did their job and whether they kept the peace as the Romans governed Israel and the Jews, the Jewish people, had a lot to do with whether they kept their job. And often, if you didn't keep your job, you lost your head. So this is
Shows
serious
how much
business.
they valued Roman citizenship too.
Yeah, they
Obviously,
value, absolutely. This
Really big
was
deal.
well protected, yep. Okay, and there's just a little sketch I found on the internet of maybe to give you a little visibility. Here's Paul on the horses, and they get the spearmen all around. He's well protected. And so, when they arrived in Caesarea, they presented Paul and the letter to the governor Felix. He read it, and then asked Paul what province he was from. Cilicia, Paul answered. Now, it turns out Cilicia is southern Turkey, I think. It's kind of that crest up over, kind of up above Syria and over, kind of above the Mediterranean Sea, kind of that area up in there, Cilicia, which probably was I don't know, I'd have to look into it, probably was a well-off, province of the Roman Empire where Paul grew up, was educated under Gamaliel, and was a big shot. So probably one of the more cultured and civilized areas of the Roman Empire, which had become vast. Paul answered, he read it and asked Paul what province he was from. Cilicia, Paul answered. I will hear your case myself when your accusers arrive, the governor told him. So now these accusers who wanted to kill him on the way, they're kind of committed now. Now they're going to have to go, now that they've charged him and they've got something against him and they can't kill him, now they got to go answer to Felix and present their case. So the plot thickens. This would really make a great movie. When your accusers arrived, the governor told him. Then the governor ordered him to be kept in prison at Herod's headquarters. 5 days later, so Paul's hanging out there, waiting, story of his life. 5 days later, Ananias, the high priest, arrived with some Jewish leaders and the lawyer Tertullus. Oh, good, we got the lawyers involved now. To present their case against Paul to the governor.
And by that name, he must be a Roman lawyer.
Yes, because like Tertullian was a Latin church father. That's when the church started to move away from the Greek fathers and the Greek thinking, interestingly enough. In fact, well, we won't get on that. Tertullian, yeah, probably a Latin Roman lawyer. And they had lawyers back then. And probably they had the same problem we have.
Nothing has changed.
How do you tell if a lawyer's lying? His lips are moving, right? Yeah, okay.
That's right.
Oh, I got a lawyer out there in the audience. He, you know, this friend of mine out there in cyberspace, he's a lawyer, and I was surprised when I found out he was, and that's a compliment. He's a swell guy. I love him. We have a lot of fun together, and he's just too good a guy to be a lawyer. But he's smart, and I've talked to him about a little book I'm working on, and because I need somebody with a lawyer perspective, so he's helping me with that. So that's really cool. Okay, so Paul was called in. Tertullus presented the charges against Paul in the following address to the governor. Okay, opening argument here. Now listen to this carefully. You have provided a long period of peace for us Jews, and with foresight have enacted reforms for us. For all this, Your Excellency, we are very grateful to you. Okay, butter him up a little bit.
Yeah.
And Felix is probably thinking, sure, buddy. You can't stand me, and I know it. But go ahead, do your lawyer thing. But I don't want to bore you, so please give me your attention for just a moment. We have found this man. Now, check this out. Here's the accusations against Paul. We have found this man to be a troublemaker, who is constantly stirring up riots among the Jews. I forgot to turn the recorder on, so I'm not recording any of this. I'll turn it on now, and I'll have to go back and work on the first part of it. I even have a sign here. See? Record. What? I'm telling you. You guys remind me, will you?
Saw that.
Next
I
time?
should.
Okay.
You didn't say anything. We didn't
I
know.
didn't. I'll tell you. That's why I got to have you guys here. I would get myself in trouble. We found this man to be a troublemaker who was constantly stirring up riots from among the Jews all over the world. Constantly. All over the world.
All over the
Now, there's
world.
some truth to this. He was going all over the known world. There's always some truth to what lawyers say. There were riots getting stirred up. And Paul was even the, what would you say, instrumental cause and not the immediate cause or something? He was what he said would eventually cause a riot, but he wasn't trying to stir people up to, hey, let's go take over or anything like that. So there's always some truth to it. He is the ringleader of the cult known as the Nazarenes. Furthermore, he was trying to desecrate the temple when we arrested him. Remember that? What was he doing to desecrate the temple?
I don't recall.
Letting the dirty old Gentiles come into the temple to desecrate it. We can't have that. That's us, by the way.
Yeah.
You can find out the truth of our accusations by examining him yourself. That's not a very smart thing to say, because Paul's not going to admit to it, but I don't know, that was his opening argument.
Not much of an argument.
Not really much, but, basically he's saying he's a troublemaker, he's a ringleader, and he desecrated the temple. Not a whole lot of proof here, but hey, it's an opening argument. Then the other Jews chimed in. Okay, yeah, the lawyer has spoken. Woo! Okay, we're ready to go. Declaring that everything Tertullus said was true. Now, he may have said more than that. It might have just been a summary by Luke. The governor then motioned for Paul to speak. So Paul said, I know, sir, now here's his opening argument. I know, sir, that you have been a judge of Jewish affairs for many years, so I gladly present my defense before you. Okay? Much more reasonable. Right. He's not buttering him up. He's just saying he's recognizing that he has been a judge of Jewish affairs in the past and acknowledging that and saying he appreciates that. And so I'm gonna tell you my perspective on this. So he's going to present his defense. You can quickly discover that I arrived in Jerusalem no more than 12 days ago to worship at the temple. My accusers never found me arguing with anyone in the temple, nor stirring up a riot in any synagogue or on the streets of the city. And all that's true. He wasn't stirring it up. They did happen, but he wasn't stirring them up. He was saying things, kind, benevolent things about, he was just claiming that as we've seen in the book of Acts, that Jesus was indeed this promised Messiah from the Old Testament, the Jews, and that he rose from the dead? Didn't even make an offer, usually. He just said, I'm declaring this. That seems to be the gospel message. I'm declaring that Jesus is the Messiah, that he rose from the dead, he's the Son of God.
End of story.
So believe that. Not if you do something, God will do something for you. Okay, so that's all he was doing. Wasn't trying to stir anything up. But this totally threatened the religious system because it wasn't their interpretation. It wasn't what they believed. And it began to, and the more important thing is it undermined their authority. That's what it really came down to. My accuser never found me arguing with anybody in the temple, nor stirring up any riot in the synagogue or in the streets of the city. These men cannot prove the things they accuse me of doing. But I admit that I follow the way. Remember the slang for early Christianity was the way, because Jesus had said, I am the way, the truth, the life. So that kind of became the slang for it, which they call a cult. I worship the God of our ancestors, and I firmly believe the Jewish law and everything written in the prophets. He's not objecting to that. You find that in Paul's writings. He says, go keep the law. It's good. The law is good. God gave the law to protect people from themselves. It wasn't a, let's see how much fun I can take away from you and see if you can handle it, and if you can, I'm going to whomp you. No, God had given laws to protect people from doing things that destroy society, destroys themselves. And if you look at the Ten Commandments and the Old Testament law, even the dietary laws, as we looked at a few weeks ago, were designed to protect, to not be eating certain kinds of meat that spoils easily and that kind of stuff. By the way, there's a book called None of These Diseases, written by a doctor. And he chronicles all these things in the Old Testament that will prevent sneezing.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, bless you. And but all the things in the Old Testament, the dietary laws, that they had no idea why they were doing. God just said to do them, and he chronicles how a lot of these things were really designed to keep them from diseases and different things. So called None of These Diseases. By the way, I mentioned the book Who Moved the Stone, and my friend that read it, he said that Frank Morrison was not a lawyer. I'd always heard that. He said he was an insurance salesman.
What a difference.
Well, maybe not.
Yeah.
Hey, we just went up a notch. Let's see, used car salesman, lawyer, insurance salesman.
Politicians at the bottom of that.
Yeah, politician way down there.
That's it.
So anyway, I'm corrected on that. I'll have to look into that. But anyway, that's a good book also. The guy did a very good job of chronicling the historic aspect
He had a
of the
legal
resurrection.
mind, even if he wasn't.
He had a legal mind, yeah. It's a well-written book. Okay, so I admit that I follow the way, which they call a cult. I worship the God of our ancestors. I firmly believe the Jewish laws and everything written in the prophets. I have the same hope in God that these men have, that he will raise both the righteous and the unrighteous. Because of this, I always try to maintain a clear conscience before God and all people. There's a painting I found. Kind of helps to have a little picture of things. I've been looking for art over the history of the church. Some of it's really very interesting. Because they try, before photographs, they would try to have one picture and try to characterize the moment. Paul's got his hand up. That's the way he started speaking, and there's Felix, and there's the guys in the background there, and it kind of captures the moment.
There's the lawyer scowling at him.
There you go. Yeah. There's the insurance salesman in the back there. I can see he's waiting for. You need life insurance, buddy?
He might need it.
Okay, after several years away, I returned to Jerusalem with money to aid my people and to offer sacrifices to God. My accusers saw me in the temple as I was completing a purification ceremony. Remember, we went over that. They were completing their vows and that kind of stuff. In fact, Paul told them, go finish your vows, go do the purification thing and prove to these people who are claiming that we don't we're going against the Jewish law. Go ahead and do that stuff and pay the money and everything, and I'll prove it. Actions speak louder than words, remember from a few weeks ago. My accusers saw me in the temple as I was completing the purification ceremony. There was no crowd around me, no rioting, but some Jews from the province of Asia were there, and they ought to be here to bring charges if they have anything against me. Those guys who were there, they ought to be the ones bringing the charges. If I desecrated the temple, where are they? I think Paul was a pretty smart lawyer,
I think so.
and I think he was trained in legal things. When we get into the book of Romans next spring, this spring coming up, that's kind of a legal layout, not extremely, but it kind of has that.
It's legalistic.
It's kind of got that law legal argument where you go step by step and precept on precept and lay your case out.
It's legalistic in the good sense.
In a
not
good
the
sense, yeah.
deleterious
Right.
sense.
So, ask these men what crime the Jewish high council found me guilty of, except for one time I shouted out, I'm on trial before you today because I believe in the resurrection of the dead. I mean, he raised his voice and made a big issue of it. And that's what you do. You go if you're taken in before somebody to answer, you admit anything you've done. You say, "Yep, I that's what I did." Be honest. If you haven't, then say, "No, I haven't," and please show me the evidence. And you put yourself in their hands. At that point, Felix, who was quite familiar with the way, adjourned the hearing and said, "Wait until Lysias, the garrison commander, arrives." He's the guy that sent him. "Then I will decide the case." He ordered an officer to keep Paul in custody, but to give him some freedom and allow his friends to visit him and take care of his needs. A few days later, that's what we're going to do next time. I'm going to stop right there because I don't like to get too much stuff. We could probably go on. Just a piece of this story and a few little things in there that are helpful to us. There's probably not, some of these sections aren't just ripe with spiritual lessons and all that kind of stuff, but that's okay. We're just going through the text and seeing what's there and finding what encouragement we can have. And sometimes it teaches us about life, sometimes it teaches us about society, sometimes it teaches us how to conduct ourselves. Like I said, there's kind of a thing in there about the thing about being honest when somebody asks you something. What was the other thing I'd said? I forgot. But anyway, there were a couple of good things in there. You remember, right?
We remember.
I said some good things. Okay, what thoughts do you have?
Well, something caught my eye when I grew up. I always lived down the street from a Church of the Nazarene, and I never knew anything about it, so it makes me want to look up what that is. It's actually is it a branch or offshoot of Christianity?
Yeah, no, it's a denomination.
Denomination
Yeah,
of Christianity.
like Presbyterian,
the Nazarene.
Episcopal,
Yeah,
Church
I've
of the
never known
Nazarene,
any
Church
of
of
those.
Christ. There's probably 300, 500, 800
Never mind, then.
denominations.
In that case,
Yeah, it's
Jesus
one of
was
Alright.
from Nazareth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that when they say Church of the Nazarene, they mean Church of Jesus.
Yeah.
There's
See,
so
the-
many, and there's all kinds
the
of
title, the name Church of Christ was already taken, so they go, let me see,
Oh,
how
I
about
need
Church of the
to-
Nazarene?
this. I
That's
need
not
that.
copyrighted yet.
Yeah,
Yeah, never mind.
yeah. And,
What was the purification?
okay, well, hang on, she's got a question, but when I get silly like this, I don't mean any disrespect for denominations.
No.
I know some folks in the Nazarene Church and they're fine
Yeah, I
people.
understand.
I'm just being a little silly, so.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Please
Yeah, I
forgive me.
get it.
Okay. I'm glad they're there and I'm glad they do what they do and that they're part of the Christian
I think I
community
even
and
went there
doing
once.
their own thing and trying to bring an anchor to society. I appreciate the churches out there. Yes, what's your question?
What was the purification?
It comes out of the Old Testament where they would take sacrifices into the temple and sacrifice these animals. And the picture, it's a bloody, messy thing. Remember, we went through that when we were
Running
in
down the
John.
street.
It's gross and all that, and you almost go, what's with these people? And it's intended by God to be messy and show how awful it is to sacrifice something. But the point was, God didn't tell them, well, sacrifice your kids and that'll be the illustration. It was a bunch of animals, and the animals are here for food and for nice little pets, and they're also here to be an illustration of more important spiritual things. Well, That's because it was pointing to this person who would come, that God would come as the person Jesus and give himself as a sacrifice for all of us, for our sins. But I think he wanted it to be a picture of something that's very, it's an awful thing. That it's graphic.
Yeah.
It's kind of shows how bad sin is. That when we do things that hurt us, and God has to come in and rescue us from that, it's not an easy task. It's a difficult task, and somebody has to, since sin, these things we do that hurt ourselves eventually will kill us and we'll die. Somebody has to die, okay? And God says, tell you what, folks, I'm going to step in and I'm going to die in your place. I'm going to take the death you were going to get by your own doing. That's pretty cool. I mean, that's really a wonderful thing that he's done. So that was just a very graphic, and God knew it would stick in people's minds, and it does. And so this purification, they would go in and do the purification ceremonies that they would do, and do a little sacrifice of bird or whatever. But the Bible in the Old Testament and New Testament makes it very, very clear, like in the book written to the Hebrew Christians called the Book of Hebrews, that none of these sacrifices did anything to save you from your sins. Not anything. It was totally symbolic, and it was a representative of something. It represented something much greater spiritually that was going on by God on our behalf. Okay? That's
Just
kind of the story behind that.
That's all it was.
So then,
Yeah.
And also in purification, you had to wash your hands before you handled the Torah, the book of sacred law, and men had to be circumcised. There are all sorts of rules. And as St. Paul points out, nobody could adhere to the 993, whatever rules the old law of Moses prescribed. No one can follow it. There were too many of them.
Plus they had 9,000 more that they
Yeah.
added to it about how many steps you got to take on a Sabbath day. You know, you can't walk more than 50 steps, so keep track. Pretty soon it just became this huge legalistic system that was bearing down on the backs of people. And this is always the danger of religion, frankly, is that it's whether it's intended or not by religious leaders. And I don't mean all religious leaders, but some. And just historically, it's intended to weigh you down so that you're under their yoke. That's why Jesus came and said, hey, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, and we'll pull together. And you know he's doing most of the pulling. You just kind of get to be part of that. We're going to pull this
My yoke is
load.
easy and my burden is light.
That's right. And my
Yeah.
burden is light. And come to me, all of you who labor and are struggling and burdened down, and I'll give you rest. This is the message he has for us.
I think it's really interesting. One would think that Christians, looking at this example in our own Bible, would see the danger of religious zealotry. And I mean, these people were supposedly close to God, true believers in God, and yet they were willing to slander, to defame, and even to murder,
Yeah,
to protect their particular
Yeah.
view of God,
that's right.
who is much greater than anything
Yeah.
they could ever imagine.
There's
And the problem is, in Christianity, we have many historical and even current examples of churches that, not churches, but people, leaders and others who have chosen to actually follow the bad example that's in their own Bible.
It's very easy for us to do as
Yeah.
people. I think it comes naturally to us. We're very insecure. Somebody threatens our belief system that we, especially if you've been taught since a little kid. I'm not saying everything that's taught from a little kid is wrong. I'm just saying whatever you're taught, it becomes very important to you. And it scares you if somebody begins to erode that in any way. And you will protect that feeling of safety and security of, I got the truth. I don't want to have to change. That's a very frightening thing. And so yeah, that does happen a lot. And it is ironic. It's ironic that the God who is loved by far in the Bible and the writings, God is presented as the one who's loved. He is patient. He is long-suffering. He is a redeemer. He's a restorer. He's a savior. All of these things. Yes, he's also a judge. He's going to make judgments, and a responsible person does. But to slam that over to he's going to eternally punish you and never let up because you didn't do something to get him right with you, which is what religion is all about. It's doing something to appease the gods or appease God. When Christianity, true Christianity, is God doing it for you. You can't do it. You don't need to because you can't. He's done it all for you, and all you do is respond and say, thank you. I receive it. Thank you. And then your life changes. We walk that careful line where we begin to, I think instinctively, we by our nature want to believe we have something to do with this. We earn it at least just a little bit, either by believing something, doing something, not doing something, and God says, no, has nothing to do with this salvation, this saving you that I did is totally unrelated to anything you do or anything you believe. That doesn't mean believing isn't good. Doesn't mean believing doesn't bring some gain. You gain by believing, but you earn nothing. That's a very important distinction. You earn nothing when you believe, but you gain a great deal, because now you're engaging with God and you're getting involved in His realm now. If you don't, then you don't benefit from it, but you're not under some kind of horrible condemnation for not believing, because that would be, if that were the case, then when you believed, it would be the action you took to merit something with God. And the New Testament is very clear that there's nothing you can do. That salvation is the free gift of God by His grace that you cannot earn in any way. Paul will say stuff like, we are saved by Christ alone. And just the way he presents the gospel, it's always presented as a declaration of something that's already been done for us. So, what else? Any other thoughts or ideas before we depart?
Good one today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good.
Thanks.
Yeah, we were playing with half a deck. Well, half a broadcast.
No.
I might go on and try to put the front end on it afterwards. So if you're tuning in and you missed the first half, then I'll try
you
to
missed
piece
the
something
first
together.
half?
I didn't record it. I didn't
You
record the
missed
first
the
half.
the
So
red button.
you guys need
Where's that red
to
button?
remind me
Ah.
the sign isn't working. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so that's it. So next week we'll move on. We're in chapter 24, so I think there's 28 chapters. So we're gonna be done with this. I would say
We're good now.
we do about a half a chapter a week, so maybe 8 more weeks we'll be done. So what's that? March, April. So about May
I'm gonna go to Rome.
we'll move into the book, the letter written to the church at Rome. And we're going to shift gears a little bit. It's not so much a story as it is Paul presenting these wonderful truths. So we're gonna shift a little bit about what we're looking at. It's not going to be so, because we've been in the Gospels and in Acts, and they're kind of narratives and stories of accounts of what happened. Now we're going to get into a letter written to a church from Paul, telling them, he's kind of laying his groundwork and taking them through the basics, and then saying, and he gets to chapter 12 and he says, therefore, by the mercies of God, I urge you to present your bodies a living sacrifice. He spends 11 chapters telling them information, never asks them to do hardly anything. And then from 12 on, he says, now here's what you need to do. What's interesting about that is we want to go out and do all these great things, and God's saying, you need to have some understanding before you try to do things. You need to know who you are, who I am, kind of get that down, not perfectly, but understand it. Then you'll be able to go actually help somebody and have a better life for yourself. So that's all coming.
Might be worth mentioning that we're about a month away from Easter now.
Wow.
So we're
Wow.
about 2 weeks into Lent.
Yeah,
Easter will be
Okay.
the first week of April,
good.
first weekend of April.
Good. I'm also working on, there's about 4 or 5 people in town here, and some of them are believers, some of them kind of aren't, or sort of are. And I wanted to get some little music videos going where they would play a song, either it could be a spiritual song, or it might just be an encouraging song. It can't be "My Baby Left Me and I'm So Blue."
We've heard that too many times.
I'm scheming on the girl over there, and I
I
shouldn't be
haven't.
doing
You
this.
haven't heard that song?
No.
What are you gonna do, Carl? You're gonna
So I've got a friend, we're gonna experiment with making little music videos, not like on YouTube where
No.
people are walking around, but just them playing a song and singing. And I've got 2 or 3 people that do this. and I thought there would be something I could put on at the end. You
I
might
like that when we
it.
used to do it in the beginning. Remember the music?
Yeah.
videos? You'd play the music stuff.
But now I got to be careful because if I put any
Copyright?
kind of music
Oh,
video
yeah.
that's
It'll be original,
copyrighted,
yeah.
they'll shut me down.
Yeah.
And I either have to start putting ads on YouTube
Mm.
to do it, or even Ustream. I'd have to go get the original author and pay him a few pennies or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Or just do original composition.
yeah, there you go. Well, you even got to be careful with that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
original.
Do original.
I'll probably do something that's not so original, but the way I do it's original. So they probably won't even know what song it
It'll be
was. You know?
okay.
So anyway, I'm looking at that. I just thought it'd be a nice little way to finish the broadcast each week. Okay.
Do
So
a
anything
Christian
else?
version, the House of the Rising Sun.
That's right. Oh yeah, I do that. I do it in the bar, and when I get one of the verses I do is "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound." It fits. So I do a verse of Amazing Grace in there, and people kind of like it. They go, yeah, you know, saved a wretch like me, you know. So it works. It works. It's fun.
I was going to say, you've heard Heartbreak Hotel, Elvis, right?
Yeah.
Since my baby left me, I'm a new place to dwell.
Oh my God.
Hey, maybe we could change it to Holbrook
You guys
Hotel.
that far back?
Yeah, there's the Heartbreak song Carl was referring to.
I could just make it Holbrook Hotel.
Yeah, the Holbrook Hotel. That's good. I love it.
Okay, everybody's done. So thanks for tuning in. See you next week. And if you got any comments or questions, you can get on the website and email me and say hi or whatever. Like to know who's out there. If you want to be anonymous, that's fine. I know there's about 15 to 20 log-ons every week.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow,
we got
good
about
deal.
it's usually at least 15, and that's people logging in. Some of those are couples, so there may be more. So I don't think everybody's identified, and that's fine. You
Hi out there, folks. Glad you're here.
yeah,
Goodbye, all
whoever's
lawyers out
yeah,
there.
bye. We probably just lost all the lawyers that were
Bye,
watching.
Oklahoma.
You chased them all.
Okay, all right, we're done.
That's it.
All right.
We done.
Let's see what you see. Okay, you got audio
So if you
meters.
get up in the morning,